Right, well, we are recording this session. We've recorded the majority of our over 30 sessions since we started Black History Lunchtime Conversations last October. And gosh, it's been quite a year, hasn't it? But it's been a really fantastic opportunity to be able to explore with other people what work's being done about Black history and learning more about Black history, and then to also have activists like Jean-Samuel Keller, who's active with his work, with his organisation. So we'll catch up with folks in a little while. But first of all, I want to welcome all of you. It's brilliant, but especially to say to Maggie from An African Twist to Your Everyday Dish, a good friend of mine, who's going to make a start by explaining how she makes gumbo and what the history of gumbo is. So if I stop screen sharing, then we can go back to and find Maggie. So if you want to do that little thing in the corner whereby you can either have the speaker or the gallery, I don't know, I've got a laptop, so it's in the corner for me. So you can make it so you can see Maggie looking absolutely brilliant. Welcome, Maggie. How lovely.
Thank you.
Oh,
can you hear me okay? Sorry, this is a problem with using a phone. Someone's trying to call me.
Oh, right, okay.
Folks, I'm so pleased to be here. And I know I'm going to try and be as professional as possible, but I am actually so pleased this is quite relaxed because anything could happen. So let me make some disclaimers. I've got a pop-up shop and it runs from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And my girl it's half term, so she's worked this morning and has gone home. So if someone comes through that door, I might have to say something to you. That's the first disclaimer I'm making. The second one is I was hoping to set up to see how you could see the food and all, but don't worry, I'm sure it'll all work out well. And I hope you all enjoy this session. Liz and I have talked about it for a while, and because I'm African, by heritage, I was born in the UK, but I'm African, born to African parents. I know a bit about Africa, I especially know a bit about African food. So Liz has said I'm Maggie Ogunbanwo, but those who know me, my friends call me Maggie. And I am the founder and bottle washer at Maggie's An African Twist to Your Everyday Dish. Now, for 30 years, I have been cooking, 30 plus more years I've been cooking in the UK. So I've been cooking as an African and I've cooked for Africans, but my main audience is not African. So I have modified a lot of my cooking to African foods to be able to present it in a way that is acceptable to the palate here. And part of what I did when I moved to Wales was I thought I would bring Africa to Wales, because I realized that some people in my village, and I live in a little village called Penegrois, and some people in my village would never step outside the mainland of where we are, never mind move to the island. So they're unlikely to go to Africa. So I thought I'd bring Africa to them by food. And so we've traveled around Africa, the map of Africa by food, for a couple of years, for quite a number of years, actually, more than a couple. And I have learned things both from indigents, from indigents of the particular countries, and from my training. My mother was a foodie, my grandmother was a foodie. So I've learned things from them, and I've learned things from research. And gumbo is one of those things. Now, I'd heard so much about gumbo before ever making it. And I am doing an evening one time for Chad, for the country Chad. And I realized that this is something they're calling gumbo. And, you know, I'm thinking, I know what this is. I know all about this. So I did some research about it. So that's why I thought I would come and talk to us about gumbo. And I'm doing it on my phone, so I can only see 4 of you at a time. So I hope you're all smiling there. There's 3 I can see, one of them's not smiling. So I'm hoping you're enjoying it anyway, not naming any names, Jean, Samuel. No, I'm kidding, I'm joking, it's because I know you. Okay, so before I go on, let me tell you a little bit about me. I have a background in food. I studied as a microbiologist, but I have a background in food. My mother was in food, my grandmother was in food, and I was always going to go into food as an interest for me. So I say in a book that I wrote, my first book, I've written 2 books. It's called 100 Things I Wish My Mother Had Told Me. And I say in my book that I got all the cooking genes. My sister had no interest in cooking at all. And I loved experimenting and cooking. Right from a young age, I was making food for my friend's party and not making money out of it till I got wise. Anyway, then recently I wrote The Melting Pot. And this is a cookbook. Well, I edited The Melting Pot. And this is a cookbook that contains 30 recipes from the Black and minority ethnic community around Wales. And it has been supported by the Welsh Government and by the Welsh Government Food and Drink Division. So apart from being the founder and bottle washer at Maggie's An African Twist to Your Everyday Dish, I am a member of the Food and Drink Board, the industry board in Wales as well. And I try to champion the cause of Black and minority ethnic Black and minority ethnic businesses, food businesses in Wales, and make sure that we are seen and our products come out there. And it's really working quite a bit. We are seeing an increase in the number of businesses that are being recognized and helped to come onto the food chain or the food market in Wales, and increasing the diversity. And you're thinking, when is she going to tell us about Gumbo? That's what we're here for. Folks, I will be so happy to chat with you. I love actually interacting and talking, but we're going to start on Gumbo. And then when we take a break, we can chat. So, 2 things about Gumbo. There's no recipe that I come across that I don't modify. The Gumbo I'm going to make for us today, the Gumbo I'm going to demonstrate for us, is based on Louisianan Gumbo. The term Gumbo itself is in French, it means okra. In a Bantu language, it's called Gumbo and has been shortened to Gumbo. So Gumbo is about okra. And that's why I was quite shocked when I realized that, oh, we cook this thing that people call Gumbo. And I started having imaginations of the people that were taken from West Africa to the new world, wanting their okra, and wanting their okra soup is what we call it. And somehow, maybe we're making Gumbo and it's become Gumbo, and it's been made to fit the palate of the new world. And so right now, it's actually considered a Cajun, a Creole dish. So I'm going to make us a version, and that version starts with, and I'm going to try and show us everything. That version starts with what we call a roux in cooking. So it's a mixture of a fat and oil in this case, and flour that's been cooked down till it becomes really chocolatey colored. Now, having said that, if you check all kinds of recipes in the world, you'll find that they say different colors. This one I find is really great. It's really easy to make. But when you're making up this roux, you just put the oil and the flour in a pot, and you just have to keep an eye on it. This is not one of those things that you begin to prepare and then go away and do something. No, you have to keep an eye on this, because it can go from lovely chocolatey brown to burnt in no time. And once it's burnt, it tastes awful in the food. So what I do is I make a large amount of this roux. You can see that there. And I chill it, or I freeze it, and I bring it out when I want. And this is the basis of the Creole Louisianan Gumbo. And I think what they were trying to do, because apart from bread in Africa, we don't use, and when I say Africa, I grew up in Nigeria, and so I know a lot about Nigerian and West African cooking, but I also know a lot about African cooking. So I'm talking as a general rule. But in West Africa, we don't use a lot of flour in our cooking. We don't use a lot of, we make bread. We have breads, and we have flat breads in some part of West Africa, but we don't use a lot of flour. So the flour in this case, or the roux, is supposed to thicken our gumbo. Okay. Other things. So we have got peppers. This is half a pepper. So I have chosen to use 3 peppers because it looks so cute and really nice when you come to save it. So we've got our peppers. We've got spring onion. We're using that. We've got onions. And it says in the recipe, I think I sent to you, brown onions. Now I'm using red onions. And so this is me as well. I don't think anything is particularly fixed. Red onions have a sweetness that brown onions don't have. So perhaps that's why the recipe that I sent to you, which I said was based on someone's, has a brown onion, but a red onion will do. It'll give you the flavor. It's just a bit milder. I've got tomatoes. So you can have a tin of chopped tomatoes and you can use that. But today, because I had loads of tomatoes that I'm using in making my sauces, I've chopped some up. So we are going to use fresh chopped tomatoes. We also have garlic. Garlic cloves. Now I love cooking with garlic and onion, and I tend to put quite a lot. I've been really great in this recipe I've sent to you. I have given you quantities, but I would say live a little, you know. If you try it and you want something else and it doesn't work, you go for that. So we also have okra, lady's fingers. Now, I'll talk a bit about lady's fingers, but okra is a very African thing, is a very African vegetable. It grows in the tropics, but it's, in fact, I was listening to Dr. Jackie Harris. I think she's written High on the Hog, and she was in Benin recently, looking at the history of food in relation to America with Stephen. And she was saying that okra actually comes from West Africa. It's gone from there to the rest of the world, to Asia, and well, yeah, that's what it said. That's what she says. But okra definitely is a thing that you find in West Africa and grows seasonally in the hot season. So have I shown you all? So I haven't got my okra here this minute because I'm using a bit of frozen okra, but I'll get it before this is over if you don't mind. And what I've done, oh yes, let me tell you the rest of the ingredients. You can make a gumbo vegetarian. You can even make a gumbo vegan. But for today and for your pleasure and for mine, because I'm going to eat it, we are going to make a seafood and chicken gumbo. Now, there are all kinds of gumbos. You can add all kinds of things to them. So what happens is that traditionally, when we make okra soup in Nigeria, we call it, when we put everything in, we call it aseko. That means added all together, and we'll add different kinds of meat. And I really think that that's the history of where you have these mixed things that are added to our gumbo. So we have crab meat today. We have a bit of cooked chicken, and we have seafood mix as well. And all the meat we're using is either cooked, our chicken is pre-cooked, our crab meat is ready to cook, it's cooked already, it's in a tin, and our seafood is. So we're going to go, you know, enough talking, Margaret. Let's cook gumbo. Before we do that, I want to point out two things. Now, traditionally in the Louisiana gumbo, Cajun seasoning is used, but for today, I am using Maggie's Niger spice. This is one of my spices. This is one of the things that Maggie's African Twist does. We make up sauces and spices that are inspired by Africa. And no Louisianan dish is complete without a hot sauce. And so today we've got Maggie's chili sauce, with the original chili sauce. We have a roasted with balsamic, which would go well with that too. In fact, let me just show you here. I had something to show you about that. Yeah. So we have, and I'm not trying to sell, I'm actually just trying to tell you your choice of sauces. However, if you wanted to buy, you could go to my website. Okay, moving on. So we have a green sauce, we have a roasted with balsamic, we have a hot and sweet, and we have an original. But for today, I'm looking for some fire, so I'm going for the original. So now to start on our gumbo, can I ask, does everybody have their recipe with them? Are you following me?
Unfortunately, we don't have the recipes because I didn't get them. Something must have happened in the transfer.
That is so sad, folks, because I did try to send them so you could have them before today. But if anybody wants the recipes, I will send them to Liz again. I will resend them, but you can also get in touch with me and I will send them to you. I might even put them on the website and you can get them from there. What I'm going to do now is try and get this down and see if you can see my pan. The problem with this is that I can't see your faces and you can't see me. So what I would really like you to do, just to help me along here, can you see my pan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I would like you to actually talk to me or respond to me because I can't see you. I haven't put my...
We're going to get a TV studio set up. Maggie, so good. I think we ought to have a series. Okay, Simon.
I will get there. Okay.
Yes, many apologies about the recipe. Maggie said to me the other day she was going to send it. When it didn't arrive, I've just checked my email now and it's not there, but we'll get the recipe for you. I tried looking at a few other recipes, but we can share it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so folks, I'm sorry, I was talking to you as if you could see the recipes. That's why I was going through step by step. Now I can see you and I can see my pan, so I can talk to you from here. This will be easy. So what we've got now is our pan, really beautiful pan here, great non-sticking. So we don't need loads of fat, but we're going to put a little bit of vegetable oil in there. You can use olive oil. I've got vegetable oil in there, and all the ingredients I showed you, I chopped some up earlier just to make our lives easy. So when we cook gumbo, we put the ingredients in the order in which they cook slower. So yes. So the onion cooks slower. So we put that in first, and we start stir frying that. If I'm going too quickly, please tell me. I get very enthusiastic when I cook, and I just on and on, and you know. Okay, so I got my onion in, and I'm going to put my garlic in here now. And this is, I've got about a clove and a half of garlic going into that has been minced down really well. The onions were rough up.
No, it's beginning.
You don't want to, well, I don't. I don't know that people do. You don't want to chop the ingredients too finely. You want big chunks. You're making a kind of stew. It's what a gumbo is. So you want these chunky bits in the stew.
Would you say that's on a medium heat or high heat?
One of the things about okra, I have to talk about this, is okra has something in it that it's been described in the New World in Louisiana as thickening the gumbo. But I have to say, nobody described it as it's slimy, like a flour. It's something that you grow up with or you get used to. And I think that the reason that in the New World they came up with roux is because maybe if they use less okra, then it's not as slimy, so to speak. It's really something tasty and something you get used to with the okra. So right here now, I've got my onions and my spring onions and my spring onions and my garlic in there, and I'm getting a bit of roux in there. Okay, so when I say roux, I mean of flour and oil that was previously cooked, and I'm stir frying that quickly, and then I'm just going to throw in the other ingredients really quickly here now. So I've got my green peppers. I was going to say to you, so you can see me putting my fingers in this. I'm putting it for the family. If you were eating this, I wouldn't. So I'm going to put in about half of my peppers in each. And this, again, is my choice because peppers cook down really quickly and they go to mush. And I like to have some chunk in them. So if I put in half now and half close to when I'm serving, then we have our peppers and the color. And there's my celery going in now. And that's all gone in there nicely. And what we do now is just make sure I haven't left anything out. I'm going to add a bit of stock. Now you can add, if you are making this vegan or vegetarian, use a vegan or vegetarian stock. What I've got here actually is a stock that I made. When I chopped up all the bits for the gumbo, I then cooked down the bits that I cut out that I'm not using, and I boil them up. So that means you don't waste those bits and they give you a really nice stock. And so what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to let that simmer. It needs to come back to the boil, and then we're going to add the rest of the things. So what I'll do, if you all don't mind, is I'm going to put the lid on. I'm going to go retrieve the okra, and then I'll come and talk to you a bit more about gumbo. So Liz, I give you 3 minutes of my time. That okay?
I'll ask you a question in a minute, David.
Okay, once I've got the okra, we'll get to the questions, and I'll tell you a bit more about these things.
Okay, so the first question was from David. He says, is that on high or medium?
So I started this on high. You start the stir frying on high, and I've turned it down now because what I want it to do is to simmer. And when I'm cooking it, I'll turn it to a simmer. But I must explain to you that I'm using one of those tabletop pumping stove things, and they're not very, they're not very responsive to high or low. But you want to start on high, you stir fry, and then you want to turn it. Once you've got everything boiling like that is, you want to turn it down to a simmer, because all we're trying to do now is get the vegetables soft enough to be going with. And also I need to get the okra and put it in quickly so that when you boil okra, it begins to thicken. So I need to get it in there to thicken. I will be back in a second.
Wow. Looking good. Smelling wonderful from here. Oh, Sivani, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you. I am really fine. And thank you for sending all this contacts and all this information. It's great.
It's okay. It's what we're about, isn't it? And Sivani's just up the coast from where Maggie is in Colwyn Bay. And Sibani, when we first met, you were mayor of Colwyn Bay, weren't you? Fantastic achievement. And you're now the mayor's consort.
Yes, yes, reciprocal. And she's such a loyal person, really. She's not from my own race or color, but she's such a loyal person, and she reciprocated. She didn't have to, but she did. She has.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yes,
So
yes.
look forward. Okay, Maggie, are you adding anything else?
Okay, I'm back now. So what we've got here.
Oh, you're having cookery demonstration. How wonderful.
Yes, cookery demonstration with Maggie today, Sibani.
And okra,
Sorry?
in fact, okra is not very easy to get a hold of.
Maggie, yes.
I can't go to modern technology because you get frozen okra. So for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, this is okra.
Sibani, turn your microphone off, will you?
Oh, sorry.
Because they're very elegant tapering
Maggie,
you can buy them frozen chopped in Morrison's if you want to try and make this.
Maggie.
What okra does here is it actually begins to thicken the sauce. I don't know if it's obvious to you here, but I can feel it begin to thicken my sauce here. And I've put about half the bag of it. Now, there are a number of things. So
Maggie, the sound is very good. What's happened to the sound?
Just 1 second, please. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but it's not very clear.
Okay, give me 1 sec. I'll try and adjust the sound.
Okay. Right, well, I must say it's looking absolutely delicious, and I can see you now, Jean Samuel. So your mouth's watering, is it, the idea of this gumbo?
I'm very keen.
Yes.
Yeah, Maggie, you're making me hungry. Even though
Bummy.
Hungry for some gumbo.
Yes, is gumbo on your menu at home, Bunmi?
Can you hear?
Now, it will be this weekend.
Oh, that's lovely.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we're trying again. Everybody put your mics off then, and we listen to Maggie.
Is it any better now?
Much better, thank you, Maggie.
Okay, I put on the speaker on the computer, on the laptop, and I've switched the one off so you can just watch the food on that. And look at this. This is thickening up really, really nicely. Now, the issue with gumbo, I have to say, people, also, is that as there are as many recipes as their grandmas, I'm going to add tomatoes to this, but there is an argument that tomatoes are not a part of gumbo. Now, this is where the African part of it comes in. In Africa, when we are cooking in Nigeria particularly, in West Africa, well, Nigeria I know about, when we are cooking okra soup, we do not add tomatoes because tomatoes tend to decrease the thickening capacity or ability of the okra. So we actually do not add tomatoes. But in some gumbo recipes, and this one I've given you, tomatoes are added. It adds color, it adds taste, it adds character, and so that's why we add it here. But if I was going to make a traditional Gumbo or okra stew, I would not add that. So I'm talking a bit, I am cooking a bit. We've got a really nice looking stew, and there's our sauce getting quite thick. So what we need to do now is season it up and add the rest of the things, because our vegetables have actually softened it sufficiently. So what we're going to do is, remember I said Cajun seasoning is traditionally used in the Creole cooking of gumbo. Now, all of you, I heard someone say they were going to cook gumbo today. So we have what we call a Niger this and that spice. And it's an all-purpose seasoning. And when I was a kid, every time my mother told me to cook something, would add a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of the other. It was the same mixture of spices we would add. And so when I got older, I shut my eyes, imagined it, and made up what I call the Niger this and that spice, courtesy of my mom. And I'm going to add, I think, about a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons to that in an Ayurvedic way. I think you saw me just pouring that in. And folks, it smells wonderful. You have to take my word for it. So in the recipe, it says you need about 900 mils to 1,500 liters of stock. Add it a bit at a time as you need. I can feel this thickening now, and I still have more things to add. So I'm adding that. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. If you cook with salt, you can add a little bit of that. Okay, and then I am going to add my meat or my protein. So I've got my I've got a mixed seafood here, and at this point it's not going to take very much longer, because if you leave seafood too long, it just shrinks, especially prawns, and we don't want them to shrink. We want this lovely hearty soup. So I've got a lot of seafood in there, I've got a lot of chicken in there, and I'm going to add the rest of my, looks like I'm rushing, but I'm not, we're just on the last leg. I'm adding the rest of my 3 colored peppers to that. Now, if I was cooking an okra soup, as opposed to a gumbo, a Nigerian okra soup, I would be adding loads and loads of red pepper and loads of chili pepper. We call our big red peppers tatashe, and that's, I would grind that up and I would add it, and then I would add something else, Scotch bonnets, that we know them as, to give it that fieriness. Now, I'm not very good on fiery, even though I make hot sauces. So what we're going to do, and this is one of the reasons I made my hot sauces, is we're just going to add about a teaspoon or 2 of hot sauce. Can you see that beautiful, luminous orange color happening there? And we're going to stir it, and we're going to let this all cook up. I am going to add a little bit more stock to it. And there's something else I want to tell you about. Gumbo filet powder. Now, this you can't buy locally. I think I bought this in America. It's made from something called sassafras leaves. And I think what happened is because okra in sorry folks, we have a taker, and that I'll keep talking and I'll explain to her.
Sort out your customer and we'll just talk for a moment, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Okay. Well, while that's just doing its bit and doing its cooking, let's just go back to what we were going to do with the screen share, shall we? And then when Maggie's back, she'll. Okay. So, all right. Let me just get that out of the way. All right. So, Maggie will be with us in a few minutes. She has an open shop at her session, so at her place. So somebody's obviously arrived. So while it's cooking, we'll just go through some of these. Now, I've put this PowerPoint on the actual website, the spanglefish.com/Black History website. So I wanted to thank everybody who supported the conversations and say that we're going to have a break at the last session on the 16th of July. And then we're going to have a chance to develop the resource website. Now we've got that set up, and that's its heading at the top. We may make some changes, but we've used the Sankofa bird, which is also the logo that Bunmi uses with her Sankofa Pan-African productions. So we're going to have articles and links so that we can pull together all the information that we found during this past year and add additional information as we go along. There's the most amazing library collection now on YouTube of Zoom articles and presentations. In fact, I listened to David Olusoga last night. He did a really, I don't know what time it was in the UK, he did a really brilliant presentation with the UCL team. So we're going to, though, during the time when we're not holding these formal sessions on Fridays, we're just going to do a Zoom session on Tuesdays from 10 till 12. That'll be a bit awkward for anybody over the other side of the Atlantic. I'm sorry about that, but you can join at any time and we'll keep the information going. And these sessions will also double up as the Black History Book Club, and Leslie and Caroline, my colleagues from the North Wales Jamaica Society and Learning Links International, are supporting with that. So we've got so many good publications coming out now, we want to share them. So as soon as Maggie comes back, if somebody either wants to shout out to me or Maggie will shout out to me. So
I'm here.
Oh, you're here, you're back again. All right, off we go then. We'll look at that again later. Right, Maggie.
The customer ran away. I'm not really sure why, but there you go. Maybe she was just wondering what was going on here. Okay.
Yeah.
She was very interested in the cooking though. Okay, so folks, right here, this white stuff you can see at the top is our crab meat, and that's boiling away nicely. And you'll be pleased to hear that I've tasted it for you all, and it is absolutely fantastic and has a really nice chili kick. Okay, so I was explaining about filet, gumbo filet. Some recipes call for that, and what happens is in Louisiana, well, okra, even in Nigeria, even now, is grown seasonally. And the only way to preserve okra is to dry it now. But in those days, maybe perhaps before they started drying it, they found that they could use sassafras leaves ground up to thicken the sauces. So this is actually added to some gumbos and not to others if you went to check for recipes. It is not necessary, but I add it just before serving because it gives a little to our okra. Now there are two, another thing I do, so half of my packet of okra is still here. On other occasions, if I buy fresh okra and cut it up and add it to my gumbo, I would keep half of it and I would dip it in semolina and fry it up and just add it as a garnish to that. It adds an extra bit, but it also gives the crunch that the European, I would say, palate prefers to the thick mucilage, that's that word, slimy is what they say, which comes from okra. So if you used a whole lot of okra, you would have this really thick mucilaginous stew, which nothing wrong with, but if you're not used to the taste, then I would suggest that you did it the other way. So that's the rest of our okra going in there. That I think looks absolutely fabulous. Now, gumbo is traditionally served with rice. So I'm just going to leave that to cook just a little bit, and I'm going to sit down and chat with you. At least that's my plan. If I can get my chair around here, I will sit down and chat. You can ask me questions. This is what I meant about being a bit informal, sorry. Okay, so I'm here and you can see my pot and you can see me. So I started by saying that in French, the actual French word for okra is gumbo, and the Spanish, or is it Spanish or the Portuguese, who took slaves from the West Africa, probably heard the term Kingombo, and they refer to it as Quingombo, and that has been shortened to gumbo. In the Spanish-speaking islands, they do sometimes refer to it as Quingombo, but that is shortened to gumbo. all around the world. I'll tell you a small tip I found out, that Caribbean men like to eat gumbo because it is considered that okra is an aphrodisiac. So there you go. That's one for you all. You can all rush to Morrison's if you have one, or your local market, and get some okra for you or for someone you know. The other thing is that you can have okra, fresh okra. If you bought an okra, and do you know what? We're talking about gumbo, and you're wondering why I'm talking so much about okra. Gumbo is about okra. There are recipes out there without okra in it, but they are not the roots that come from Africa. This okra was imported from Africa, and the gumbo thing, I mean, like I said, the evening I had this Chad evening and found this, I thought, this is what we make. How come they're calling it gumbo? And I realized that it must have been imported. People must have been looking to try and recreate their dishes from home when they were taken as slaves across to the New World. And gumbo is what it's come out as. And I read one of the writers, the expert on gumbo, is actually quite adamant that that gumbo is given its place as something that was that influenced the food of America through Africans, because some people try to say it's a French dish based on something else, but anyone who's been in Africa, who's cooked okra, and who then attempts to cook gumbo will recognize that this is more to do with Africa and the slaves that were brought across and trying to recreate their dishes with the ingredients that they had to hand. I hear that right up to the 1800s, there's a record of serving gumbo. So it has been around for a long time. In New Orleans, this is where early 1800s, there are records of gumbo being served. The expert supposedly on gumbo is a guy called Stanley Dry. So you can look him up if you wanted to know more about it. So just a last thing about gumbo, before I keep quiet and you can speak, you can ask me questions, is there's seafood and chicken gumbo, which we've made today, is most familiar. But you can make gumbo with duck, with smoked sausage, with oysters, and you know, in other countries, they make them with whatever meats they can have, they have available. And if you were in Nigeria and I made you an okra stew, you would have different sorts of meat. You would have parts of cow leg, you would have dried fish, you would have fish in it, and all kinds of things. So I hope you have enjoyed watching me make up gumbo. Once that is cooked, I will serve it up for us, but for now I will keep quiet and have you questions.
Okay, well, we had a question from, or a point to raise from Simon. Do you want to talk about this, Simon?
Yes, just from working in Benin, so next door to Nigeria. Gumbo okra is used in organic cotton growing as a way to attract pests away from cotton. And of course, they do eat the gumbo afterwards. And they usually serve it with as a stew, but with no meat. Meat might be served on the side, but with a paste. So you dip the paste made from cassava usually into the sauce and just eat it. Lovely way of spending an evening with a Beninoise beer.
Simon,
Okay.
Thank you for that. That is really great. I didn't mention that, but it's true. In Nigeria, when we eat okra stew or gumbo, we always eat it with some sort of paste. And yes, there's one made of cassava, which we call gari, but there are all kinds of paste. There's maize, there's plantain, and okra goes really well with all of them. And I thank you for that information you gave about you know, them planting it with crops. I didn't know that, but I did read something that okra, I think something about how it's good as a, is it an antiseptic or something about
it might well have a medicinal use, but they call it gari in Benin as well, so it's the same. Obviously the people are across both sides of the border. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So Salamatu, are you going to tell us about eating gumbo in New Orleans? I can't imagine anything more. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good.
Do you hear me?
Hello.
We can't see. Oh, can't see you though.
Yeah, but do you hear me?
Yes, fine, thank you, Salamatu.
Do you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. I think I was attending a conference in New Orleans in I think it was 2018. Yes, 2018. And I was slightly surprised. I was very surprised to see that they eat gumbo. It was served in most of the restaurants, a very popular dish. And the base was okra, of course, which was, surprising. I didn't know it was, Maggie, sorry, I came in at the end of your talk, but I hear that you said that the origins is traced to slavery, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I never thought I would see something like that in that part of the world. And they ate it with crawfish. Most of it was eaten with crawfish. And yeah, I liked it. A little bit strange the way they prepared it, but yeah, it was all right. So yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Bunny's coming in. She's going to comment. Bunny's in I don't know where in Canada, near Toronto.
Yes,
Bunny? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Thank you, Bunny.
I've just been sitting here salivating, and it's amazing. I'm really intrigued by the way this dish has been adapted, like you said, to suit palates in the new world. Because I'm assuming, I don't know whether you have the same experience, but in Nigeria, we only ever cook okra with palm oil. So they probably didn't have palm oil, which is where the roux might have come in.
True. Yep.
And of course, we'll never cook it with tomatoes. Yeah, but everything else is just makes my mouth water. Reminds me of my grandmother's ilasipo.
Oh, yes. I have to say that it is a very tasty dish. And I also have to say that it has to be made right to be that tasty. But the first time I made it, I was so impressed. And while it reminded me of okra, because it has the texture, because it has okra, and it's a completely different thing. So I would encourage anybody not only to try our okra stew, but to try gumbo. It's really good. And I was just, if anybody has any other comments, I'm happy to take them. I was just going to serve it up so you can see, so that the vegetables don't all disappear. And I'll do the last bit, if that's okay with all of you.
That would be wonderful, I think. Yes, let's do that. And then we're going to just take a few moments to find out about Historian.
So generally, like I said, in the Creole cooking and that sort of thing, it is served up with rice. I have got rice and peas today, not just ordinary rice, and I'm going to serve that up for us. But before I do that, I'm just going to put a slight sprinkling of filet powder. I would say about half a teaspoon of filet powder, and I'm going to stir that in. And I'm going to serve it up. So you have all kinds of choices. I hear that in some parts of Creole cooking, you have this bowl that it's served in, and you have loads of juice, and then you have your rice sitting in it. Here I've got rice, and I'm serving. Can you see that? Let me just wipe this, and then I shall show you.
Wow, Maggie.
Okay, that's our gumbo with rice and peas, with our okra on it. It actually looks fab, folks, even if I say so myself. But what's more important is it smells absolutely fabulous. The addition of my Maggie's spice really does do something to it. And just so you know, I tasted it before. I've got a bit on my hand there. Okay, folks, that is to die for. So if you're not here and you can't try it, my husband and I will eat all of this on your behalf. And when you get the recipe, please try and make it. And if you did want to make it my way, just go onto the website and you should be able to get hold of the sources that I have used.
Right, well, I think there might be 1 or 2 people coming round knocking on your door.
Oh yeah, you all are welcome to come this afternoon. My husband doesn't get in till later, so you can come and have his share and he'll be none the wiser.
Salam Matu's on her way. Okay, well, it's great that we've had a little crew with us today from North Wales, and Maggie, that was just amazing. Thank you so much. So I think we ought to start a series called Maggie and Me, and you can do the cooking and I can do a bit of the intros and things. It would be great. Okay, thanks very much. The only question I was going to ask Maggie was, you know, when you made the roux to begin with, how did you get it to be brown? Because if I make a roux with flour and oil, it's light coloured.
The roux is one of the reasons why we didn't make it today, is that is the one thing that is time consuming and it needs you there. If you just keep your oil and your flour on low heat and just leave it there, it'll continue to change color. It'll take somewhere between 20 and 45 minutes, depending on how much flour you have, but you have to keep stirring it. So that's why whenever I make a roux, I make a lot and I put it in the fridge. Now, I've had my roux in the fridge for quite a while. I have to say that it lasts a long time, or you can freeze it and bring it out when you need. So it's not something I would suggest that you make all the time. I've also been told that you can buy roux if you're in the States or maybe Canada. You can actually buy roux base like that if you wanted to make Louisiana style gumbo. And one of the things I forgot to mention, but Jean-Samuel has reminded me, is it goes so well with wine. Nothing like a glass of wine. I should have brought mine.
Have you got another question, or have you just left your hand up? No, I don't think she has. Right, okay. Well, that's absolutely fabulous. So while you're no doubt sitting with your mouth watering, we'll just go on, because we've got several visitors with us today who we haven't seen before or for a little while, and that's really lovely. Levi, it's really lovely that you're here. Levi is here in Australia. That's great. Have you got any gumbo stories, Levi?
Nah, look, I just remember when I was a kid, my mother used to cook okra, and I must say it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite.
Has that texture, doesn't it, that can be a bit
yeah, it's a bit sort of slimy. That's how I remember it, you know. But a few years ago when I was back in the UK, my sister in London, she did cook me a meal with some okra, and you know, I found it quite pleasant. I was surprised because I think that was the first time I'd eaten it since I was a kid. So yeah, that's my okra story.
Can I just say something in response to what Levi said? Levi, it has been written that children do say, oh, that okra is slimy like a frog, but as they get older, their palates get used to it. So I'm not surprised that when you tried it, it wasn't so bad.
I'm getting older too, so yeah, maybe.
Simon's booking his place to come round and eat with you, but we won't have a problem, Simon, because when we get back into the world of conferences and things, like when we first met, Maggie does our catering for us, so we're not daft. And we've had some wonderful times. So, and that takes us right back to our roots of Black History conversations, was when we couldn't run our annual Black History Month conference, and we decided that we would have to. So I'm just going to screen share again. We decided, oh dear, it's disappeared again. We decided that we really needed to do something online. So that's great. Right, now I've got that there. So now what? Oh dear, don't just love it. Just hang on one moment and I'll be back with you. All right then. And just to say that over the next few weeks, over the next few weeks, we're starting sessions and we're calling it our Black History Conference. So I've been speaking to some very interesting academics over the last few weeks, and seeing who would like to join us. So we're going to have some quite intensive sessions. So there's 2 slides of this. So next week, Dr. Christine White is from Glasgow University. We're going to start our conversations about reparation. And then when we get to the 16th of July, we're going to do our final session, which will also be about reparation, because this is really important. You know, what do we do when we know all this Black history, African history, shared history? What are we going to do? So that'll be important. And then Professor Satif Wakshat is going to share ideas about something he's doing about teaching history at basic education level, developing resources locally. So that very much interests me. Then I've been in touch with someone from Teach Plaques, and she's a very interesting, and I'll say some more about that. So she's agreed to come along, so that'll be interesting. Then the following week, hopped over a week now, then the next week, a lovely gentleman I spoke to in Sweden yesterday, Professor Frederick Thomason. He's not actually too well at the moment, but he's willing to talk because he's the lead person in Sweden who speaks and researches about slavery and colonialization. So he'll be with us, hopefully, and we'll talk. And then we're going to ask Jim Thakordin and Cassandra Gupta. They're going to introduce the theme of exploring indentured labour, and we may have some other colleagues who join us on that session. Right, I hope you can, well, it helps me to be able to read this anyway. So all this PowerPoint is on the main website. So I discovered I could put the PowerPoints there, but I can't email them. Then the following week, getting towards the end of June, we're going to explore what's been happening with the Windrush Day activities. That's the 22nd. Then Professor Lucy Bland, who's absolutely delightful, she's going to share her book, tell us about her book that she's written about the little known history of the children born to Black GIs in the UK during World War II. So that'll be really interesting. And that introduces another thread, and that is about mixed race. Then we hope that we might have our colleagues from Why Are West Indians here to talk a little bit more about Black soldiers in World War I and World War II, who came from other parts of the empire. Hilary Robertson Hickling will be helping us during the sessions as well, because we're looking at the stories of the Windrush departure, and we're organising other things for that too, and the Windrush stories. Then the beginning of July, we really must fit in a session about Australia. Levi, you've got to help me here, because we need somebody from the first Australian community, from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders communities to join us, because we need to share information about the Uluru Statement and the Stolen Generation. And and we wouldn't have time in 10 sessions to go through the atrocities that happened here under British colonialisation. And I'd also think we need to reflect on the first Americans as well, because Black history in America is about African Caribbean, African history. And this, I think the story of the first Americans gets lost in that, and we would like to pull that out. Then on the 9th, we're going to welcome another professor. This is Robert Burrows. He's absolutely delightful, and he's done a lot of work and on African children in the UK. And with our work on the African Institute in Colwyn Bay and Christine White's work in Glasgow, he's followed that up, and he's researching, and we're helping him with that research, folks from North Wales. And the final session on the 16th, as I say, we'll pull together the discussions we've been having about reparation. So David has been working hard on his reparation project with looking at the Dick Trust family, or and considering the possibilities there, that's going to go to the Scottish Government. Christine will speak also Jeff Palmer he did a very good presentation at the Jamaican High Commission yesterday. Dr. Lola Ramakan will be talking about our penance project, and Professor Vereen Shepherd is willing, but we're going to record her presentation. So that's what we're thinking of doing next anyway. So we've just heard from Maggie, and gosh, that was wonderful, Maggie. So Maggie's website is maggiesafricantwist.com. So you can look that up, and then you'll find as well, if you want any more information about the history behind Gumbo, then you'll find that on the website. But now we've got to introduce Bill and David, and I just put this together because this is off your website, so give us a bit of a feel of what that's like. So would you like to tell us about historical roots?
Yeah, I think I'll bring David in to begin with, if that's okay, because it's very much David's baby. So I think he should introduce historical roots. Is that okay, David?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think the first thing I should say is that neither Bill or I are academics, and I know that you've got some academics on this call, and that we aren't. So historical roots, really, it started out, it was from my wife. I mean, my wife is black, and she was teaching in primary schools in London for 30 to 40 years. And she came home from school several times and said, look, there really aren't enough resources that I can use with children of this age about people of mixed heritage, where people of mixed heritage are kind of the key protagonists. So David, I would like you to write me a short story that I can use in schools. And the other thing, David, is got to be about a character called Dido Elizabeth Bell, which some of you on this call may know about Dido.
We know about Dido.
Okay, so that was my challenge: write a book for children about Dido Elizabeth Bell, and I did do that. And that was I invented two young school children of today's era, Fern and Kate, and they go back in time and they meet these historical characters, and Dido was the first one they met. So that was the kind of the roots of how I got into this to begin with, and then coming up to my retirement in 2016, I didn't want to be sitting around watching telly all day, so I set myself a few challenges, and one of those challenges I set myself was to set up a website that brought out some Black history stories that weren't otherwise being told. So I bought myself a book that was just called How to Build a WordPress Website in a Weekend, and 3 months later I had a working website. And on there we started to put in stories that we researched and found out. We tried to concentrate on stories. Initially it was about British history of Black heritage, but it has expanded way beyond that, and it's now just basically any Black history story that we come across that we think is interesting and which perhaps isn't as well known as we think it should be. So we're not just trundling out stuff that's on the internet and just repeating it. We're trying to do original research on each of the stories, and it tends to, it's a bit diverse. It picks up whatever catches our fancy, really. We've got a couple of contributors in addition to Bill, who's done some very good articles about Black soldiers in World War I who were from Barbados. We've also got a Yorkshire historian called Audrey Juji, who is absolutely brilliant. She's contributed a number of stories that tend to focus on Yorkshire Black history, but you know, her interests go far wider than that. And we've also got quite a few stories on the website from a military historian called John Ellis, who we bumped into at a conference in Huddersfield. And he approached us a few months ago saying he had done lots of research about Black soldiers, in fact, going back into the time of Waterloo and Trafalgar. And he had nowhere really, he wanted really to get these stories out there. So he asked me if I'd be willing to put them on Historical Roots. So if you visited the site, you'll see that there's quite a lot of articles that John has contributed as well. So there are 3 children's books I wrote. There's also a book that I did with the daughter of a Black serviceman in World War I. 2 of her uncles also served in World War I. So it was quite unusual, I think, to come across 3 Black brothers who all served in the British Army in World War I. So we wrote a little book with her about that. But then after that, we got into a suggestion of Bill's, which is to talk about the first black footballers at each of the 92 clubs. And that was, whereas my books were all self-published, this is the first book that we've actually had published by a publisher. And you may not initially be all that interested in football, but we started off writing a book that was aimed at football fans and would be about football. But actually, as we wrote the story, and I think we realized that we were uncovering basically a whole different way into Britain's black history for the last 130 years. You know, the first black footballer in Britain was in the 1880s, a guy called Arthur Wharton, who came originally from the west. His parents came from the west coast of Africa. And so he had his experiences. Then we go through players who played before the First World War, people who fought in the First World War, one of whom, quite well known, Walter Tull, who died in the First World War, one or two black players in Britain during the 1930s, several who fought in World War II, and then, of course, the football story really expands with the Windrush generation, the arrival of Windrush, and there are many, many sort of these first black players who are part of the Windrush generation. So and they've all got their own different life stories to tell, and this really, I think, gives an insight into the Black British experience for 130 years or more. And I think I'll finish and then let Bill come in by saying that there's real educational potential in some of this, because children who might say, well, I'm not particularly interested in history, particularly black children who say, I'm not interested in history because I never see anybody like me reflected in the history that I get taught, might find the football interesting, and they might get into history through an interest in the football. So we do think that the stories that we've uncovered have got great sort of educational potential. And I'll hand over to Bill now if he wants to add anything.
Thank you, David.
Okay. Thanks, David. I mean, not much to add to that. David said we sometimes go off on a divergence and look at different things. Just trying to think of things the group might be interested in. We've done quite a lot of work on Equiano on behalf of the Equiano Society. And the other area that we've looked at in quite detail is the Windrush. We contributed to a book called Windrush 70 to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the Windrush. And at the moment, I'm looking at the 1,027 passengers, because at the moment, all we've got is a passenger list. We don't know anything about these people, why they were on board, where they came from, what happened to them after they arrived in England, when did they die, where did they die, and so on. So I'm trying to draw up a short pen picture of each of the 1,027 passengers. And it's amazing what it throws up. I mean, most people will not know that the future first president of Trinidad and Tobago was on board. Some people will know that Nancy Cunard, the shipping heiress, was on board. Dame Freya Stark, so it's not this idea that the 492 Jamaicans, there were an awful lot of different people, 66 Polish people, for example. So as I said, just things that the group might be interested in. There are a couple, but nothing to add to what David said.
Well, Bill, that's fantastic. And can I just introduce you to Levi Lawrence, whose dad was one of those passengers.
Wow.
And you're researching his story, and we can put you in touch with Levi right away. Over to you, Levi.
Yes, yeah, I'd love to get in touch, and and certainly send. Happy to share a copy of my father's interview that was conducted back in, I think it's back in 1999 for the BBC. And in the interview, he talks about the whole experience, why he left, and the journey across and what life was like when he arrived. So I'd be very happy to share that with you.
Brilliant, Levi. Thank you.
Yeah.
That would be really lovely, because Levi and I have been talking. I don't know how we had the conversation. First of all, we just met doing something totally different and discovered that Levi's was from Birmingham. I recognise his accent, you see, from Wolverhampton. And so we got talking, and he said about your dad, and I've looked your dad's entry up on the register, and it's just fascinating when you just make that link. So that would be really good. So what I'd like to do, Bill, I'll link with you again, is we're going to be doing hopefully some things to support the recognition of Windrush Day. And we're hoping that we'll be holding a conference on the Sunday after Windrush Day. I can't remember what the date of that is, but Windrush Day is on the Tuesday, and we thought that by the Sunday afternoon we're going to do that conference, a sort of finale, and we've got a number of people who have said that they will contribute to that. So that would be a really good event, and it would be great if you could join us there. But then also what we want to do is to move on from here. You're already getting on with writing books and doing things, and I'm not suggesting we're going to write books, but we can certainly, we've got the capability to collate a whole lot of information and make really, really excellent information, materials and articles written by African colleagues, Nigeria and other countries, colleagues in the Caribbean, so that we can, but we'll be looking then to work with others as to how can, we promote those books and those stories. And I love the idea, and why I chipped in to say, yes, we know the story of Dido Bell, was that we had the author of a book written about Dido Bell. Caroline, can you remember his name? You've just sent the book to me. Anyway, have you got that one? Let me go and get it.
There was a lady called Byrne. There was a lady called Byrne who did a book about Dido.
I posted it to Liz.
My bed sit here. Here we are, Dangerous Freedom.
Okay.
I
haven't seen that one.
And it's excellent. I haven't managed to read it all the way through yet, but what was fascinating was that we discovered, well, to me it was fascinating, we discovered that authors do research, and we're not academic researchers. With us today we've got Richard Anderson, who's from Glasgow University. No, I always get it wrong. Aberdeen, isn't it, Richard? And we have got academic colleagues who support what we're doing. And David Alston's done an awful lot of research and is very, very well respected in Scotland. And Dr. Bunmi Olasan from based over in Canada. So we've got a lot of expertise, and we've got other people that we can call on, and people who come and join us for presentations. Yeah, absolutely fascinating. I'm thrilled to bits that we're in touch with you. And are you joining the last of the South Wales Jamaica Society sessions on Saturday, Sunday? Can't remember.
I certainly will be. David, I don't think, David, you're aware of it.
No, Bill will send me the details afterwards.
Right, okay, then that's lovely. And we'll if anybody is particularly interested, the South Wales Jamaica Society have teamed up with the Why Are West Indians Here group, who look at the story of service people from around the world. So that's brilliant. Okay, well, anybody got any questions then, or Levi, do you want to add anything else?
I was just going to say to Bill that the Trinidadian singer who sang, I think it was "London Is the Place for Me," he was also on the Windrush at the time too.
Yeah. I think David and I were aghast there, because one of the Trinidadian singers on board was a lady called Mona Baptiste, and we've researched her life. I mean, I spent 2 weeks in Trinidad researching her life, as well as lots of other stuff, and we're hoping to publish a book on Mona this year. So there was a lot of talent on board that ship.
I'll just add that I have seen Lucy Bland speak, and I agree she's a very good speaker, and I've got her book, and I think it's an excellent book. I was just going to mention there are a couple of brown babies amongst the first black footballers. So that's a way that demonstrates a way in which the football book cross-cuts all sorts of aspects of Black British history. There was a guy called Steve Stacey, who was the first black player at 3 football clubs, and there was also a guy called Stan Horn, who was the first black player at 1. So there's a couple of brown babies in the book as well. And I say that's just an example of the spread that you find when you're doing this kind of research.
And the term brown babies, Lucy explained to me, is a term which is not a British term. It's a term that was used in the States, because the black soldiers were not allowed to marry their partners, their girlfriends, and so this is how this could be seen as a tragedy occurred, that there were so many issues, but it could be a contentious term. That's why I'm saying to you, it's not something just to use. It has to be explained. Okay. Well, thank you so much. That's brilliant. And there's all sorts of things you can follow up with that. I'm sure you said something as well, Bill. So we'll chat again some more. But at the end of the recording, we can always just carry on having an informal chat. So what I'm going to just do now, though, is, if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to carry on wading through this. Oh dear, it's gone right back to the beginning. Sorry. Right, okay, past Maggie. Okay, so just to go back and say thank you very much indeed. Historical Roots, great website, lots and lots to look there. Your 3 months was well used, David, learning how to use use WordPress. Right now, in about I don't know what time it is with you, but this is on at it doesn't say in the advert what time it is. I think it's about a couple of hours time. Yasser Safari, I'll send a link around with this. Yasser Safari, who supports us from Jamaica, has been doing a special project for Children's Month in Jamaica, and Mick, his little daughter there, and he have produced hilarious, I have to say it's hilarious, Plain and Simple, and he's been challenging people across the world to film themselves. He's a poet, so film the words of this. So no idea what's going to be like when he launches it as a production. So I'm sure that'll be wonderful. Okay, then another interesting thing from Jamaica in terms of books that are desperately needed. Now, I'm not sure, I don't think this is a children's book, not by the price of it, but it's edited by Diana Payton and Matthew J. Smith. And Matthew Smith is the guy who's now leading at UCL on the Slavery Ownership Project, which now has a new name. Also, just to remember, they just can't believe how many awful stories there are out of the US. And this is why really US Black history needs to be a subject studied in its own right, because it is just so awful and still the battles go on. So to remember that 100 years ago, I don't know if President Biden's been on your TV, but they've got film footage of him speaking about this anniversary over here. Absolute tragedy, and just so difficult, takes quite a lot of understanding. All right, now I'm just going to say that I'm becoming a bit of a groupie, to be quite honest, of David Olusoga's. And if you get onto YouTube, you can see so many presentations that he's done about so many interesting things. He really is such a wise voice and calm voice, talking about the history behind the issues that we're challenges of Black Lives Matter. So I'm just showing you here that this is another one of his. He did this at the Migration Museum, which again is interesting. We want to follow up the story about museums to see what are museums doing now to recognise. Well, obviously the Migration Museum's got a vested interest, but other museums like the Newtown Textile Museum now has an exhibition about an aspect of Black history in Wales, the From Sheep to Sugar projects on display there. So we're very pleased with that. That was something Caroline and I were involved with. He also, and this is back in 2019, this is really interesting. Now these are talks, these aren't the TV programs that he's done as well, which were also absolutely excellent. We need to talk about Windrush. Very interesting indeed conversation, that one. It's a little bit more about the Migration Museum. You know, who knew there was a Migration Museum in the UK? We have a very big immigration museum here in Melbourne, and I was part of the process of putting them in touch with the Migration Museum in London. And David Olusoga delivered that presentation. This is the idea of the transatlantic trafficked enslaved African corrective historical plaques, markers of reparative justice on buildings and companies that received over £20 million compensation from the British government following the Abolition of Slavery Act. It is really interesting now. People are really getting into all these stories and finding different places. So that website's very interesting. Look that one up. So that's teachplaques.org. And they've also got a petition going on at the moment, so you might want to do that. They want to educate the wider public on the extent to which the slave economy was the founder of much of modern Britain, including many of its largest cities. And if you've ever been to somewhere like Glasgow, or you've been to somewhere like Liverpool, in London it almost gets hidden, but in cities like that, it's just so obvious. Then to identify plantation owners and merchants by name, and this is some of the work that we're doing with our community-based projects seeking reparative justice. And finally, to commemorate the African and Caribbean people who were enslaved. But also the point that you made, I think, Bill, to name and recognise by name the people who came over on the Windrush. Yes, so many people have come over in years since, but that's interesting. And that's from another project which I thought I'd put some information about. I obviously haven't, but it's really interesting that on the African side, it describes this as the raiding zone. Look how much of the continent was being accessed, and then the slave import zones, and then all around the Caribbean and North America. But to recognise that the Caribbean had far, far more enslaved Africans than North America, and yet we don't always hear so much about that. I know very little about enslavement in South Africa, and that's another aspect we can look at. Right, news in the week: Germany agreeing to pay Namibia. No doubt you've had that on your TV. We've had plenty of it about it over here, and discussions about that. Oops, a daisy. And then I thought this was interesting. We've had John Samuel's wonderful art and representation and art of today. This is art from the past. I mean, just look what these sailing vessels were like. And I'm particularly interested because this says, you know, that Britannia was built in Bristol. Well, slave ships were built all around Wales and the little coves and harbours. For example, in Pwllheli, a big slave ship for over 600 enslaved people, custom-made slave ship was produced there. Jim, I put this in because Jim usually joins us, and I was going to say, you know, check out Jim's site, check out his books. We'll put this in next week, so he'll see that. And then this is a little about one of the Windrush people that we've worked to tell the story, Enrico Stennett. Okay, so I think that's just rattled through. I come across so many things, and I've tried to find a way that I can easily just transfer information and then share it. So we'll be putting this on the website too. So thank you very much indeed. Are there any, right, David says that the raiding zone map would be very useful. Yes, I'll come across where it is I got it from, because I did some a bit more research on it. It is a really interesting and well produced map, and I think it comes from UCL, but I will check that out for you. Okay, so are there any other things that anybody else has heard about, or things that might be coming up that you've heard about? It just seemed to be a very, very busy fortnight with presentations and things, and then it's gone quieter while it's been your spring bank holiday week and our getting into miserable winter week. So we look forward to seeing you next week and following this up. Thank you all very much, and I will thank Maggie again on your behalf. That was fascinating, and I will also send the menu, the recipe when I've got it. Jean-Samuel, do you want to say a last word?
Yeah, I'm happy to come back again. I'm sorry I wasn't available last week.
Oh,
And it's very impressive to see that we have many authors on board. So I'm also a very good book illustrator, should in case my services are needed sometime around that.
Say that
So,
again.
I'm telling the authors in our company that I'm also a very good book illustrator. Like I illustrate books as well. Should in case they need some services around that, I'll be happy to input on that. So
Samuel, we need to talk about that, because to have someone who can illustrate for books and other purposes, that would be fantastic. I hadn't thought of that sort of commission.
I think so far I've been able to illustrate 6 books, and they are doing well.
Lovely. Would you like to you chat to me again? We'll chat in a few minutes. Okay, then, that's great. And Richard, was there anything else you wanted to add, or David or Simon? No. Okay, then. So, Richard, anything else? What's going on up your way?
Well, we're sort of academically, we're just finishing marking and going through exam boards, and that's where Christine is right now in a Glasgow meeting on exam boards. So it is that end of the academic year, and we've had an event on campus, and perhaps I'll share this by a poet and spoken word artist related to some of the history that I talked about in my first presentation on the history of Palace Gate on campus. And so there's a temporary art installation there that was that had received a grant. And so it was always a question of when could they go and have a reading and congregate outside and install an art piece. So I was glad that was able to happen. And
that's at Aberdeen University, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. Let's stop the recording now and see you next week, but we can chat in a moment.